What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Today I'd like to talk a little bit more about mental diets and really where you're putting your attention and how you're spending your mental energy. And not only that, but really putting yourself in positive states of being in the present moment, allowing yourself to feel good now, and how important that is to be doing, because it's really the only thing to be doing in the present moment is choosing actively how you want to feel about a particular thing. How do you want to spend your life? Because really life is happening now, and so many times in the old man, it's like you're constantly just drifting into states of unconscious fear. And once you realize that fear, guilt, all of these little prisons that you build in your mind, the what ifs and worst case scenarios, and all of it kind of stems from this belief in separation, that you're a separate brain and a body, and that you're not connected with the things and situations going on in your life, which is not true, which you can start to test for yourself as you become more and more present and still, and connecting with God, with love, with consciousness, with the quantum field, the law of assumption, law of attraction. All of these things are biblical concepts, differently packaged maybe for today's vocabulary. But the end of, the moral of the story is you can try it for yourself and see with your own eyes these things working, the synchronicities and the things where you think about somebody. I had just the other day, I thought about a customer, and I ran into him at the store, and he started asking me about when I'm going to fix his door. And it's just like, it happens so regularly, it feels normal after a while, and it feels normal to feel good, even though it might seem like a struggle at first, where like the old man feels normal in states of fear and guilt, and torment and suffering as a result. The best that the old man can do is almost just feeling numb to that. Where once you catch that pattern, though, where it's like, I don't have to just feel numb, I can actually feel exceedingly stages of bliss right now to the max, whatever I can handle without the resistance of feeling not worthy, or, oh, I feel this felt so good, I must feel guilty, I must be doing something wrong because it feels good to feel good. And so really trying to move kind of consciousness, for others, just maybe as a reminder that if you aren't feeling good, and making it a practice to allow yourself to feel good without the fear or guilt creeping in, you're really missing out on an amazing thing, because like allowing yourself without the fear coming in to feel your desires before they've even taken effect in the shadow world of the illusion, because once you get to a certain point of like reaching milestones and shuffling things around, and maybe having more responsibilities or more obligations to others and stuff, you start to realize, at least I do, that a lot of that stuff doesn't really bring a lot of joy or peace, or really much of anything. The stuff that you're shuffling around with the handyman business, there is a sense of satisfaction of a job well done, with the homeowners being really happy or psyched and excited, and you can definitely vibe on that energy. But a big thing about even with that is there's so many temptations to fear. Oh, what if, like I have my guy out there right now, he's with a paint sprayer, it's a little bit windy, there's a temptation to be like, oh, what if the something happens, or what if he does a bad job, or what if something hard comes up, all these unforeseeable things. What if, that if allowed to continue unconsciously, can start to just spin you into these states of fear and anxiety, which then start to reflect into your life and start to reflect into your day. And until you make the active choice of like, I am not going to be a slave to this fear. It exists only in my mind. On some level, I am creating it, and I can choose to let it go. So many times when things get brought to our awareness in the present moment, instead of sitting there trying to battle with it, which is something I've been guilty of, if you listen to this channel, I've probably helped strengthen a lot of these like inner problems, but from just being naive, or just sharing where I'm at in my walk. It's just like, I don't think that anything's like a mistake necessarily, because I feel like it's all working together for the good. But that's part of like why you should go within, and not just like, oh, well, Mike said this, so I'm just going to blindly just go with it. So you shouldn't do that for anybody. I mean, even like your parents, in a lot of ways, like they did the best they could. but they have their own veils and their own distortions of things. We all do, and so where it's not distorted though is that inner connection, with the Holy Spirit that can help guide you to the truth, and the truth, is something that is unraveled in your own kind of hodgepodge of thoughts and beliefs and assumptions. It'll make sense perfectly with what and so there is that to be aware of. But at the other end of it, I'm not trying to actively deceive anybody. I'm just sharing what's going on with me and what's been helpful. There's so much with the truth community that just feels like a spell, especially with the they is always this impending doom, zero hope. Always putting the beast system on this pedestal like it's some hot shit, when a lot of that's inverted. And it's like, I'll listen to some people in the truth community that see the pattern of, it's like, well, you're doing exactly what the system wants you to do unconsciously, but it's like, unless you're kind of taking a big step out and not just chasing pissed on breadcrumbs and it's like, oh, what's the they doing? There's an addiction, to that fear and drama, and there's a almost like a learned helplessness of like a victim mentality that the old man just really loves. It loves feeling like a victim. It loves feeling like it's not responsible for any of the shit going on. But when you really do start taking ownership of your life and the patterns that are emerging, that's a big game changer, because then all of a sudden you are starting to connect with, the oneness, the connectivity of all things. It's like you stop freaking out so much that you're just, being left to deal with separate bullshit. It's hard to kind of put into words until you experience it for yourself, and you start to realize that God's in control of everything. Even like in my kind of walk, the first part of it was really dark and demonic feeling and just worst case scenarios manifesting. Every fear that I had inwardly was expressing itself, starting to just not understand, a lot of confusion. Would I want to redo that? No, but there's like levels to this thing. So it's like wherever you're at, you face those different fears though, and then you realize it's illusion, and then you realize that God's in control, and what you thought was fear, tormenting you or whatever is actually just kind of an assumption or belief, some inner conversation that you've been having, maybe about feeling guilty. It's like your belief that you are guilty, or there's something inherently wrong with you, starts to then be expressed externally. And so it's almost like validation. And so it's like, as you kind of believe that, it gets reinforced and reinforced, so you believe it even more and even more. But it's not until you throw out that entire paradigm and then realize that it starts becoming replaced. Like, oh, it's always been there. Everybody's known it's been a simulation or hologram or whatever, and reality can kind of shift, and you have these quantum jumps and all of it. And it's like, oh, it's just common knowledge for 2,000 years. But when you're in that paradigm where you believe you're guilty or whatever, I'm kind of just all over the place. It's like you start to see that being reflected. So it's like, as you put on like these new states that are not fear states, is I guess where I'm trying to get to. Most of the thoughts that are fearful are actually, if you're very mindful in the present moment, the feeling comes first, and then there's a corresponding thought that then starts spinning you in these different directions. And so if you start to catch those patterns where it's just like, maybe you feel like things are going good, you're feeling that energy of maybe bliss or joy or peace or any of these types of fruits of the Spirit, and then maybe there's a thought that comes up like, oh, you feel, I think you're doing something wrong. This little doubt comes in, it's like, starts to make you question that you should even feel good for some reason. And because most of the time we're so used to just suffering and living in fear that that anything other than that feels foreign and almost like a threat to the old mental paradigm that we've built. But once you realize that the fear exists within your mind, the guilt exists in your mind, and you are punishing yourself for it's weird how it starts to unravel as you go, well, I don't want to hurt myself, and I don't want to keep creating this thought pattern. I don't want to keep creating this guilt, or this, I don't want to keep creating this fear, or I don't want to keep creating this shame or this unworthiness, any of this shit, that's going on within that does not feel good, and it feels like an energy draining thing, and is characteristic of an old belief or assumption, especially a limiting belief, when all things are possible to God, and God has already laid out the promises of what's possible. Anything is possible with God, so there is no limitations, and creation is finished. So it's like, as you embody the feeling, like the soul is after the feeling, and so you start to walk in the feeling of just, what do you think, here's a good example just from like the music business is like making it. What does that mean? It's like, you make an income, you can survive. Is that making it? And it's like, well, no, making is when you put some caricature up there. Yeah, you put some caricature, on this pedestal of like, oh well, maybe Bob Dylan, or some like musician that captivated you when you were young. It's like, well, that's the example. That's what you made it means. And like a lot of like the musicians I followed when I was younger and like inspired me to pursue music. Most of them died very young under addictions and tragic circumstances. So, that was like the role models. It was like that's what making it means. It's like you do all this shit and you're still so depressed you fucking kill yourself. When you stop and think about it, but like there's so many veils and illusions that prevent you from just like kind of connecting with that. It's like, well, maybe that's not a good example of making it. If making it means dying tragic, with and like as someone who has like dealt with like drinking addictions, and very close to like over drinking to the point of just death, you can start to see how like it just, when I was going through that, and then you see other like addicts that are going through that, and it's like they weren't happy. I mean, they're in these fucking, feeling like, without this I'm nothing, or it's like I don't have like the courage to even. You start seeing how like, that wasn't a very strong picture of mental health, to begin with, because of all the drama, and maybe that's projecting my own addiction issue. But there's so many commonalities with people that have dealt with like alcohol and drug issues, and you start to feel bad for people that weren't able to get out of that pit, and so with that being said, it's like part of getting out of that is even with using those substances, it's like you're trying to escape, or there's a time I was like, I was just drinking because I was bored. And that never felt like a good enough reason. When you said, tell people, it's like, why are you drunk all the time? It's like, why not? This is something to do. It feels fun. But then, everybody always wanted like a deeper reason. Like I was like trying to drink away like some childhood trauma, which maybe I was. It's still unconscious about it. But like, part of like this thing is like, instead of like getting stuck in these patterns where you just like you need some external, and I'm not saying there's anything even wrong with drinking or using drugs, until it becomes like all of a sudden now this you're out of control and you're spinning in this downward spiral where your worst case scenarios keep manifesting. It's like you're ending up in jail, you're starting to get locked up over it, and you're starting to lose your friends and family and your jobs, and just self-respect, all of this shit, and like, letting go of that old man, because that's not even who you are, that's just a state of being that you can just stop identifying with and start putting on the new man, and going in that direction just as easily. But like the thing, and maybe it's more challenging for some people, but if you're, one of my favorite Bible verses, has to do with like almost like an addiction, where it's like you think that's like making you like God wouldn't love you because you're doing that, but it's like your greatest weakness is your greatest strength once you overcome it, and so it's like, God's, how does it say in the Bible, like my grace is sufficient for you, and my strength is made perfect in weakness, something like that, so it's like what you think is your biggest weakness or your biggest like shameful thing or most guilty thing can be transmuted to like the greatest example of just like overcoming the obstacle, and inspiring for other people, but like I don't even know how I got on this tangent about this, but it's really want to focus though on feelings, so feeling good, and not only feeling good, but when you have these like desires that maybe pop into your mind, start to try to connect with the feeling that you're trying to get from it, and embodying that feeling now. Allow yourself to feel that way. Oh, Mike, that's crazy. That's crazy to allow your. And it's like it's crazy to tell yourself negative things that aren't true. It's just as crazy. So it's like you want to sit there and justify why you're trying to talk negative. It doesn't help you. You don't grow. It's just like constricting. So it's like start allowing yourself to feel whatever you're praying for. Believe that you've already received it. Put yourself in that state of being that it's already a done deal, because it is a done. You'll be rewarded for that in God's timing as that inner identity that you're building. Identify the feeling with also an identity of who you are. You are love. So feeling good is who you are. It's not it's abnormal to think that you're fear and torment and suffering. So allow yourself. And when you get the resistant that's like, well, you should feel guilty because you're not good enough and this and that. It's like, I choose to stop telling myself that. I choose to let that go. I don't want to keep telling I'm creating that. I'm then experiencing the feelings as a result of that. And it's like, I choose to let that all go. Why do I want to keep telling myself that? That makes no sense. It's insane to do that. And so I'm choosing not to be insane, but to be healthy. And, I'm not really even telling others what to do. Go within and talk to God and figure out what works best for you. This is what was working for me. And not only that, there's a huge community of people that do the law of assumption and experiencing it at work. I started to do that years ago, when I started getting into consciousness and like Tom Campbell's big toe theory, which is like a unified field theory. And if you aren't aware of like Tom Campbell and are like science minded, and it's like a lot of religion is triggering, check his shit out, because it's try to disprove it, for one, but then try it out for yourself, because once you understand scientifically how things like with a double slit can be explained through holograms and simulation, start, and then it's like, well, if that's like his theory is like everything's based on I think lowering your entropy, so getting rid of fear is basically kind of his vibe. You let go of the fear, and and the simulation works on probability distributions based on the probability then too. I don't know if he necessarily goes into it, probably does, but with the probability of things occurring, it's also based on your faith of them occurring too. So you're not separate from the event, so it's all connected in consciousness. And so as you believe, as your faith in a particular outcome becomes stronger, like if your faith is in all things are possible with God, instead of like the limited belief of like materialism and atheism, where it's like, oh, that has so many fucking holes in it. And I don't even desire to like debate these things anymore. It's just like, if you want to believe in a materialistic paradigm and completely throw out, there's just so many holes in it. It's just almost laughable that people with an education still think so highly of these. Yeah, and I got such a problem with the scientism then aspect of culture too, where they're not even really doing science; they're doing pseudoscience, where it's more philosophy, and narrative building, where it's like you have an observable thing with no experiment, but you're just making up theories and narratives to justify your paradigm of reality, which is probably something I'm doing, but I don't claim to be a scientist. I just am a person, that's applying metaphysical things and spiritual beliefs and seeing them work, and so sharing that with others so they can do it too, because none of us is like on a pedestal, so if it's like it's working for one person, it's going to work for you too, and the biggest thing is that you just go out in faith and just apply it and do it, and stop living in fear and of the what ifs and the they, and feeling like a slave, when you can be, do, or have anything. You can feel bliss and joy and happiness more than you've felt ever. It's like as you become more consciously aware of the present moment and stop getting lost in the story of your life, or the story of the day, of like the dramas and the whatnots, and bring yourself back to now and go, hey, I'm kind of yeah, how am I feeling right now? And it's like I'm kind of stressed and not the greatest. So then like change, then turn it around at that particular moment, because the spiritual battle is always in the present moment. I hear different people in the world, talking about, warfare. Psychological warfare is the new, World War IV or five or whatever, however you want to label these things. And it's like psychological, and it's like it's always kind of been psychological. The people know, how consciousness, maybe not, totally. I don't totally know it either, but it's like there is a effect, of, affecting culture, affecting the hearts and minds, as they say, to almost start to manifest a reality that's beneficial for the people that are, trying to sway consciousness in a particular direction. A lot of it breaks down to moral behavior, and by moral, I mean, is it amplifying separation and selfishness, or is it expressing love and not fear? Basically the only difference is fear versus love, which fear is not real. It's like scarcity. It's man-made. It's like, dude, I got tomatoes that are growing in the street. Like literally, I should take a picture. Like my wife, she was like, because we got like a stump that we grow a bunch of tomatoes on. They really like that spot, and then she'll go and take the rotten ones. I'm telling her not to do it. He's business, but like, yeah, I tell her not to do it, but like, yeah, but she did, and yeah, now there's a tomato growing like a weed in between the curb and the fucking street. I also have a tomato plant that's growing on the deck. How that happened, I don't know, but like, yeah, I mean, this phone, but like, yeah, like these illusions of scarcity. Diamonds is it, talking about like the De Beers monopoly on diamonds, creating false scarcity, and like, and then the advertising campaigns to create these. The pageantry, the whole story around it, it's mostly manipulation, and people maybe aren't aware of like things when it comes to like business and advertising and marketing. It's like so much of it, you can create these brands and these illusions and stories, and but people like build these things up like, I don't know. It's weird, but like, back to kind of what I was talking about though, about getting back into the feeling of things. It's like, and for like maybe like the truthers that are just like stuck in this hopeless, there's no hope, and things are just falling into whatever people are freaking out about. It's just, live your life and feel the freedom that comes with it. That's not your problem. You don't have to do anything. You might feel coerced, because your demons inside don't want to go quietly. But it's like, once you recognize that the pattern of the inner is reflecting outwardly, and so the fears that you're experiencing are dealing with things that are going on within you, and that you have control over how your state of being is. You have free will. You're a sovereign being. It's like you can feel free now. Put it on. How would you feel if this was over and you're in heaven, and there is no beast system anymore, and you can live free, and you're not a victim, and everything else is like being in the Garden of Eden again. How would that feel? Start putting these things on. How does that make you feel? Would it make you feel peaceful or blissful? And it's like, how immediately triggered did you get by that? That like, oh, I can't have hope. There's hopeless. We're in hell, and there's a bunch of. It's like, okay, well, first off, start reading your Bible more than you're reading about they trying to kill you, trying to get to the bottom of it. What are they trying to do now, and everything else is like, and I know people might get triggered by this. I would have been triggered by it on some level when I was like balls deep into yeah, these rabbit holes, is like, and there's a lot of anger, towards the other, but at the end of it, it's just, what is that doing to your present moment? What is that doing to you now? Being angry about somebody thousands of miles away that's not even really doing anything to you, and they make you an offer, but you got to be the one that accepts it. I mean, there's rules to reality, to God's creation. I mean, it's not just some random shit. Everything's random. Everything's connected, and so it's like, and even seeing that in like the truth community, it shows that it still exists in me. I get manipulated by stuff through a screen too. I mean, I'm not most of the shit that I'm like bring up is like, hey, stop doing that. I'm talking to myself because I'm guilty of doing that. And so not to feel like I'm attacking anybody, but if you do feel attacked, that's a good sign that you've made an identity around this. And as you made an identity, like, Jesus Christ. As you make this identity, it's like it's strengthening all of these different things. But I gotta deal with business things. I got people blowing up my phone, and so thanks everybody for listening, and I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, and I appreciate your financial support. Trying to think if there's anything else to bring up. I think that's about it. So other than that, have a good rest of your now, everybody. Try to put on more positive states of feeling states, and feel that right now to the max, what you can, and when you feel the resistance, recognize it. It's like, that's just guilt, or that's just resistance, or that's just fear. And I'm not going to listen to that fear because I'm letting that go. And so start letting these things go and practicing it. Practice now is the only time to practice that. And if you aren't feeling good right now, ask yourself why you're choosing to feel like shit when you can start putting on the new man. And in God's timing, you start to see that self, that identity reflected in your environment and your circumstances and the events, people, everything. It'll start to reflect this change. This inner change will start to be obvious to you. And so test it for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. But other than that, have a good rest of your now, and God bless.